All right. So, getting started here with leaving the right impression. My name is Jeremy Lebling, everyone. I work here at DMAS. I'm the training and development consultant. I'm very new to the organization. I've worked for the state since 2015, and I wanted to increase my skill set, and I had dreams and hopes, and I came across this job posting for DMAS, applied, and in my opinion, since I am here today, I was able to leave a great impression and nail that interview. So I want to tell you a little story about how I did that. But before I do that, I wanted to say my counterpart here, Misty Johnson, is going to help me with the chat. Feel free to drop any questions, comments, or concerns there. We will also have Kathy Jones on the call as well, helping us. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll get to them as they come in. So, when I came into DMAS, I was not only excited about the interview, I was nervous. I was nervous because I was still going to be potentially working for another state agency, but it was a little bit different. So, a couple of things that I did for myself was I researched the company ahead of time. I made sure when I came into the interview space that I had a positive spirit about me. We're going to go a little bit later into the superhero pose, which I like to do myself as well as Misty does before entering the interview space. And we'll show you later what that looks like. But what that does is that provides a confident sense of ease and peace and comfort that can get me in the right headspace so I can be mindful to come in to leave that right impression with the interview panel. And again, the way I did that is I researched the company ahead of time. I remained in the moment. I did a firm handshake with all of the interview panelists, as well as, excuse me, as well as eye contact. I was taking notes during my interview, and what I was doing with those notes was I was writing down the interviewers' emails. So I made sure that when I left that interview, I tried to be as authentic as I could during the interview, and I was a little bit nervous. And when I was finished with that, is I sent follow-up emails. I sent them that afternoon to thank everyone on the interview panel, as well as a follow-up email within a week to Misty Johnson. Now, I know that there's requirements with HR and you can answer and not, and you have other candidates, but I do it just because I want to leave a smack dab great impression. So what our hopes is that you will be able to leave a great impression just like I did when I entered into the space here at DMAS. So talking a little bit about what we're going to go over today is we're going to talk about interview etiquette. We're also going to slide in some information after interview etiquette about proper professional dress attire. And we're also going to talk about some skills and next steps of that resume building and just how important that is. So today, what we're going to do in this workshop is define interview etiquette, what that is, what it looks like, give you some tips and 10 top tips for interviews, recognizing the importance and tone of your voice and body language and how important that is in the interview space. And we're also going to identify for you some rules of what it looks like when you're answering those interview questions. So, before we jump right into what interview etiquette is, in the chat, could a few volunteers let us know what they think interview etiquette is? Great. Thank you, Janice. Thank you, Misty. Oh, Misty, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you. In the chat box, we have professionalism, making eye contact, being on time, posture. That's a really good one, too.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for your answers there. Speed of speech, yes, very important. Thank you for that. Okay.
Dress for success.
So, what is interview etiquette? Let's see here. Remembering a couple of things about interview etiquette: arriving on time, dressing appropriately, researching the company, preparing thoughtful questions about the role, making eye contact, listening actively, and expressing your gratitude at the end of the interview. Now, expressing gratitude may come across as, how can I do that? I'll give you an example. What I typically do when I'm in the space is I thank everyone for the opportunity, and I thank them for the opportunity that it was a time for me to learn from the interviewers, learn about the company, and learn about everyone else, and that's my opportunity, and that's what it is for the day, and that's what it is. I'm not looking any further ahead. I'm just expressing gratitude for the moment and the opportunity of why I'm there. That's just a brief example of how I do it. Also, remembering what I do, what I say, and how I say it is so important. So, here's a few recommended guidance and tips that will help us along and encourage you when you're in the interview space as we're working together. Making sure that you're being on time, you're thanking your interviewers, you're dressing appropriately, and you're introducing yourself, as I noted to in the beginning. I'm shaking hands with everyone, I'm making eye contact. That's so important when you're leaving your first impression, because someone really important in my life told me that, Jeremy, you only have one chance to make a first impression, and here's what it is. Nobody's really going to remember what you said, what you did, even though they're taking notes, but somebody's going to remember how you made them feel. So, what I try to do when I do this is I always bring my own refreshments. I don't ask for anything else. I just come in, I take notes, I turn off all electronic devices. I'm making sure that I'm keeping a positive and friendly attitude. I'm placing all loose items out of sight. I'm clean, competent, well organized, and I'm ready. And I have those list of questions already in my head. So, we talked a lot about what we're doing in the space. Let's watch this brief video on our next slide of how to get in that superhero pose and why it's so important. Bear with me one moment while I change the speed so we all can understand it together, because this video goes a little bit fast. Thanks for bearing with me.
Jeremy, are you still seeing your video play on your end? Oh, okay, there must be a delay. For me, it ended. Did the video end for everyone on the call?
It's a stationary screen.
Okay.
Did it go through? Were you able to hear the full 3 minutes-ish? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay, wonderful. All right, everyone. So, who's ready to practice the superhero pose here today? I know I am. All right. So, here's what we're going to do. If everyone can bear with me here, I'm going to walk you through instructions of how to do this. We're going to stand up out of our seats all together, whether you're on camera, off camera, it's okay. And we're going to place our hands on our hips. But before we do that, let me just set a fancy timer here for us. All right, so we typically would do this for 2 minutes, but I'm going to do, just for the sake of time today in the presentation, 1 minute. But what we're going to do all together is place our hands on our hips. We're going to take a deep breath. We're going to stick our chest out. And what we're going to think about is imagine breathing momentarily for a few moments, just what we would look like in our superhero pose before we're going into that interview space. Now, if everyone could do that together, and I'm going to continue talking as we do that. Now, what we're doing and exerting here is we are coming to grips with our own mindfulness, and we are getting prepared mentally and physically as we go into the interview space. Now, what this is going to do, this superhero pose, is going to make you breathe more, get in touch with your inner body, and it's going to help you prepare for that interview space when you get in there. You're going to have more confidence, you're going to be able to think clearly, and you're just going to know, hey, I'm a boss and I can do this. And that's how I feel when I go into the interview space, and I'm much more confident. This example comes from Misty Johnson showed me, and ever since I've been doing it myself, I feel so much better when I walk into any space in any type of meeting. So if you just want to sit there for a couple more seconds, we're almost at the minute time frame. All right, everyone can take a seat. And so you can practice it. You can have it any way that makes you feel comfortable before you go into the space, because I just think that it's really helpful to get grounded and for everyone to have their own unique superhero pose. So thank you for taking the time to get into that pose with me today, and I hope that you already feel more confident. Okay, so in terms of tone and your voice, knowing that words communicate more than you think. You can say you know how to perform the job duties, but if it doesn't sound like you know how to do that, you really won't inspire too much confidence with the hiring managers. So, making sure we have a list here of different things you can do for your tone and how to prepare and answering your questions for the interview. Making sure that you pause for the 5 seconds and that you gather your thoughts and take the time before you answer the questions. By doing this, you'll sound more confident and you'll come across with your tone. I apologize. My alarm keeps going off and it was distracting me. Sorry about that. um, so, if you practice your answers ahead of time, you'll be able to have that confidence displayed in your interview. Make sure that you reduce your filler words, and some of those words are like, and you know. I try as best I can to take that out of my language when I'm in the interview space. And when I go into an interview space, I know that I'm nervous. I know that they're nervous and that we're all meeting for the first time, whether you had a phone screening or not, and that it's okay to be nervous. I don't have to apologize for that. What I try to do is what my bosses tell me to do, and that's play to my strengths of being nervous, to use that energy and to transform it for the positivity of the interview space. Also, I need to avoid raising the pitch of my voice. So if I go high, low, like that in the interview, it might throw someone off as I'm answering the questions. Typically, what I try to do as I practice myself is I try to have a monotone, clear voice and come across, even if I am nervous, but take a breath in and exhale and pause and then give them my answer. Moving forward to body language, it can communicate as much information as what you're saying. So, for instance, if I come in, I'm hanging my head down low, I don't have my superhero pose, I'm not smiling, the interviewer might say, I'm not sure if Jeremy's even a good fit. Should we even ask him these questions? I'm not sure if Jeremy even wants to be here. And all of a sudden, we go down a wormhole of negativity. That's not where we want to be. So I show up with a smile, regardless of how I feel, and even if I'm nervous, a firm handshake, eye contact, and I make sure I sit up straight and have great posture throughout the interview. My true thoughts and attitude are often being reflected in that body language. So I try to make sure that I'm in tune with that, and I am in tune when I do my superhero pose ahead of time. It's kind of like my cape, and I wear it into the interview. Having a positive attitude about the interview shows that my abilities will be a great fit for the job description as I'm connecting with the interviewers. Now, we talked a little bit about interview etiquette and leaving that right impression, and here are some of those tips so we can recap. When I'm in the interview space, I think that this is the most important one on this slide. Ask for clarification when it's needed. And the reason why I do this is because I know that it's going to not only impress the interviewer, but it's also going to help me shape and mold the practice that I put in ahead of time. So I've researched the company. I've also practiced my STAR method questions. I have examples in my mental vault here, and as well as I'm ready for those questions when they come at me because they may ask me four different ways of one type of question I've already rehearsed for. So if I don't understand it, and I do remember this when I was interviewing with Misty and Troy and Montserrat here, is that excuse me, I asked for clarification when there was a three-part question that I had because I wanted to make sure that I was answering all of it very clearly, and that was very helpful. I'm also honest. I'm staying true to my message, and what that means for me is I'm displaying my skills and abilities in a way that I have had the experience. I'm not going off topic, I'm not diverting, I'm being honest about who I am and my skills and abilities. I always answer questions with my intended audience in mind, and I avoid sensitive topics. Now, speaking of sensitive topics, some of those include divulging things about my personal life that wouldn't be pertinent to the job, such as my age, religion, or political beliefs. I also don't bring in any type of negativity, even if there's negativity from a previous experience or a situation with a job. As I'm explaining that, I will cut that out of the message and I will talk about the STAR method and all the different tasks that I took, and I will avoid negativity. And I do this by using clear and concise language. And if I'm not sharing negativity about past experiences, I'm going to have a great positive experience. So, segueing into interview professional and dress attire. So, what is interview professional dress attire? As we can see here with this image, we have the man and the woman. We have in a navy blue suit, we have nice tie, dress shirt for the woman. We have a nice skirt, nice blouse, and you see there's not a lot of, excuse me, there's simple jewelry. You see there's soft and subtle makeup, neat and tidy hairstyle, as well as dark and neutral tights, dark and low heeled shoes. You see dark and plain socks for the man, black leather shoes. There's a belt. See, everything looks very well put together here, but the most important things are that they're comfortable and they look confident. So, Professional dress attire is a description of formal clothing worn in the workplace. It can be also categorized as, depending on your job and where you work, everything's different these days, is for business and professional. You have business formal, business casual, or casual. But most important is you want to make sure you're confident and you're comfortable. I know for me, if I'm wearing uncomfortable shoes, I'm going to be a wreck. So I try not to do that. All right, so we want to leave that lasting impression. So what do we need to do? We need to make sure that we're using proper interview etiquette. We need to make sure, again, that we're arriving on early. Now, we all know we're human, accidents happen, traffic happens, so giving yourself ample time when you're dressed professionally, maintaining eye contact, really bringing in a positive spirit is the way to go for me. And I do that by sending thank you notes at the end to the interview email and the HR contact, thanking them for the opportunity and speaking about how I'm grateful for it. So moving into our next section, and I know you just saw the question slide. I apologize. We're going to do questions at the end because we want to do for the sake of time. So planning for the future resume workshop. In this part of the workshop, we're going to evaluate sample resumes. We're going to show you additional resume resources. We're going to identify best practices, tips for writing your resume, as well as reviewing resume creation tools, because there's a lot out there, and I know I get overwhelmed, so we wanted to just make it a little more concise for you. So moving into some best practices and tips for writing your resume. Can I have someone unmute or place in the chat a few volunteers and tell us what they think is important to go into a resume? And Misty, I know you have answers. But Misty, please hold so we could have the audience. Thank you.
Hi, this is
I
Elliot. Contact information, of course, is the first thing you want to include in a resume.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Otherwise, how are they going to reach you?
Yes.
Now, do you put your full address in there or do you just put the city and state?
If you're asking me, I have the full address in my
Okay.
resume.
Yeah, I used to do that too. And then I was like, oh, I'll just put city and state. It really just is preference, but I was just curious.
Would anybody else like to volunteer of what they think is important in a resume before we move forward?
A work
Any
experience
work experience? Thank you. That's wonderful.
and perhaps the volunteer work.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely. Yes. Thank you for that. I forgot to mention volunteer work. That really does, that shows that you have, those green flags that we're looking for. We have a lot of stuff coming in,
All right.
education experience. Oh yes, David, your skills that match the EWP. Yes, I was hoping I'd see that. Your targeted skills, any related technical skills, certificates. Yes, all of those things. Are we worried about the length of the resume? Nope. No. Make it as big and beautiful as you want. We just want to make sure that we're shining and we're matching the EWP.
Yes.
Nice.
And sorry, go ahead, Misty.
No, it's just like, nice job, everyone. Thank you for participating.
Yes, those were some great answers. Thank you, everyone, for that. So we're going to watch this quick video and we're going to see a little bit more of some useful things that are included in your resume. All right, everyone. So how about a quick little knowledge check here? That was a great video, by the way. So what can I have a volunteer in the chat or unmute? What do you think is important that you should include in your resume?
I don't know if we're gonna get this one, Jeremy. I'm not sure.
It's a toughie. Tell you what, though, lunch is important. All right, hang on.
Thank you for the joke. That was fun.
Woo! Everyone got it right.
Stephanie, is that Stephanie?
Yay! Oh, see all the way, of course. We always want to know what everyone ate for lunch, right?
That's kind of do, actually.
They say humor, there's been so much research. I know we're not talking about this, but I'm going to say it anyways. If you laugh, you live longer. So I try to laugh. All right. So a couple of quick do's and don'ts, which are noted of things that you should put in your resume and things you should not include. So always make sure you format it where it's easy to read. You have your standard resumes, which are 1 to 2 pages, always including your accomplishments and skills, and focusing, as someone had mentioned in the chat, on the EWP information and just how important that is, and matching your skill sets and aligning to that in your language. We're going to go a little further into that later in the workshop. But some things to not include are you don't need your salary history, reasons why you're leaving a previous job. I think that goes back to maybe presents a level of negativity that is unneeded in the space that you're trying to send this document so they get to know you a little bit better. You don't need to include the professional references. You can include those on another document. And most important, don't be deceptive. And what that means is, you know, somebody's going to know if you come into the interview space and you start talking about things on the interview and in the interview and the screening process, and they'll know you're lying, if you haven't done it. And that's okay if you haven't done it. I've always been upfront and honest and just say, that's a skill that I'm actually working on building, but I don't have experience with it. And usually interviewers are pretty impressed by that. So here's a copy of a sample government resume. And the best way to write your resume is using the language from the EWP and the job description to make sure that your language aligns with what the employer is looking for. For instance, if you have a skill set that includes managing people or maybe managing people in the office, include this with your current work as it relates to the EWP, making a list of your accomplishments, focusing on your skills and achievements that fall in line with the EWP, including words in this are customer service, computer skills, and again, remembering that when you're writing your resume for your government job, now a requirement is you don't necessarily have to include this education piece right here. It's no longer required. So it's more of a preference. But for me, in all honesty, I like to put education on my resume because I think it stands out and it also shows the hard work that you've put in. But if you don't feel inclined to, that's okay because they took it off and they let you leave it as just a preference. So, what should you include in your resume? Always that contact information, your professional summary, employment history, your key skills, certifications and also the other information which is in certifications. So going back to what Misty talked about yesterday and the EWP of an office specialist, if I could get my words right, y'all. Remembering that the goal of a government resume is to include all requirements in the EWP and the best practices are not to copy and paste from the EWP, but to use some of the same language to demonstrate your knowledge and skills and abilities. So let's take a closer look at each of these categories. Professional summary first, work experience, education, not education, skills and achievements. So I'm going to use my highlighter here. let's look at the language here, which is working in a fast-paced environment, which was in line with the EWP, communicates effectively. Let me find that in here. Excellent customer service skills. We got that. And then knowledge of Medicare and Medicaid eligibility processes, detail-oriented processes. Okay, so knowledge of Medicare and the EWP states that you have experience working with the low-income clients. And you see the language that they used here. However, you don't have to say it verbatim. The fact that you mention it shows that you have Medicaid experience, and that's why they put it. So moving forward into the work experience category, let me get my highlighter out again. This language here, maintaining an office filing system and equipment, answering incoming phone calls in a timely manner, utilizing a multi-line telephone system, and gathering information and accessing client needs. And moving down here in the bottom section of the office specialist shows these quantitative numbers that we do need to display in the resume process as we're building it. Government work, they really want these numbers on here, and you do stand out if you're able to have those and put them in there. Now, I do want to say, if you don't have exact numbers and you can't figure out how to do that data-driven statement, what you can say is you can talk about how you did that without a number, and there is ways to view that, because a lot of people sometimes say, well, I don't have exact facts because I'm not a manager or numbers and data, but it's out there. So make sure you do display it as they did here in this work experience. All right, so moving on to the skills section. In this section, computer skills are very necessary, and they've added them in this skills section with the Microsoft Office, expert on all office practices and procedures, editing software, and coding. And this is so important because this is the additional consideration section. And with the Excel knowledge, they have met all the EWP minimum requirements and the additional requirements, which was Excel, which is in the EWP of the Office Service Specialist. And those are right here. And if I'm going too fast, everybody, I do apologize. I will slow down. Okay. And as Misty alluded to, Excel is let me go back to our chat. An additional consideration on the EWP and is another point of the screening matrix. Thank you, Misty, for that. Okay. So lastly, we always need to put our achievements, because our achievements will take us back to what we talked about earlier, that superhero pose, how we're fantastic. Here, what we're doing is we're flying our green flags high. We're demonstrating a culture of learning by putting in all of these wonderful awards we've received and achievements, that we're lifelong learners. We're using LinkedIn training to count our data, and that you can see each year we put on here 2017, 2018 to 2023. And the interview panelists can see your growth and trajectory with your achievements. And this is absolutely important. So a little bit about, we had talked about different things that to include in your resume from the EWP, talked about different formats, the language to use. And now to talk a little bit about, there's a ton of creation tools out there. So you can go from anywhere from Google to Canva to Microsoft, to now everyone's using, AI. AI is, like your best friend. At least it's my best friend. So on the screen we have, this is an AI built resume example. Coming through is, if you want to go, in my opinion, old school, which I like as well, and that's through Google. And then this here is a magical resume created through Canva, which is mine and Misty's favorite. And then you have your traditional Microsoft. The reason I give you all these examples is that there's no wrong way to create a resume. You can create it as basic as you want, as colorful as you want. It's not mandatory. It's whatever you're wanting and you're looking for in your experience and your journey. So all of these tools will provide you with the mechanism to move forward. Here's a link that we'll send out to in the chat, which has a few different templates via Google, so you can look at Google and Canva resumes. And at this time, I just wanted to thank everyone for your time and being here today. And if there's any other questions or you'd like me to go back to any of the slides, we can definitely talk about them. Thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
Yeah, so any questions about what we've gone over? Or any good insight from our hiring managers? Do I have any hiring managers on the call? Elliot, I'm just curious, I was thinking about this earlier. What would you do if, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, so don't feel like you have to answer, but if you were looking for a detailed oriented position, but you notice lots of like spelling and grammar mistakes in the resume, but they screened in, and that just comes from a place of not knowing from my position.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. If the EWP mentions you have to be detail oriented and your resume or your application is just riddled with typos, most likely you're not really
Yeah.
getting screened in. Because
Okay.
that is part of, if you claim to
That's
be
true.
detail oriented, your resume should look that way as well and not have, typos.
Thank you.
I mean,
I was really curious about that.
it also depends, I believe, on the volume. If there's one typo, yeah, let it slide. That can happen to anyone, but it's just riddled
That's
with
true.
typos. That's not a green flag, it's a red flag.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so grateful you're on the call. I had that question since yesterday and I wasn't sure. Does anyone else have anything they want to share or other questions since we have some experts on the line?
I have one. This is David. Is bullet best or better than paragraph format? Or is there a difference between the two that you prefer on the resume?
Does anyone want to take a stab at answering?
I think, David, that bullet is informative, and it lets the company know key elements of your skills and what you were doing. In the other format, it could get a little wordy, and sometimes I know that not everybody or application tracking systems aren't really spending so much time looking at everything. It's more they want to go and match it with the skill sets in the EWPs, if that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That was a really great question. And just in terms of screening, I don't think you are deemed if it's in a paragraph format. As long as they can find the mandatory requirements within your summaries, then you'll get screened in on the public sector. Montserrat, I see your hand up.
Yeah, hi. Just to piggyback on that question, and from the plain language regulation perspective, I think it's most likely better to see the information displayed kind of in bullet point. It's easier for the reader rather than reading a whole paragraph description. So that's my 2 cents, my preference on that one. But I also wanted to suggest this has been a wonderful experience. As everybody says, great feedback from my point of view about the lessons we've learned. I was gonna ask if you guys are thinking, I know that we can access the recording through SharePoint, but there is a limit time for those recording. I was wondering if you guys were planning on downloading those videos and putting them on the website or the SharePoint page, because I think this is going to be so helpful for others that come in the agency or that they want to transition to other positions. So that's my suggestion.
I think it's a great suggestion. I'm gonna run it up through Sarah, my supervisor, and get her feedback. But we recorded it with the idea of putting it in the VLC. So I think it will happen. I just haven't received confirmed approval yet. The other option, if they ask, is for us to rerun the series and allow more opportunities for it, which we're just as happy to do. But I'll definitely let you all know. We'll send out some sort of information letting you know if it's in the VLC. That way you can forward it to people that you think would benefit. And thank you so much for that. And thank you for your perspective coming from an accessibility lens. And that's why you're such a wonderful, workforce member, is you always have that lens on. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Elliot, I'm so glad you mentioned this. When it comes to government positions, we have so many acronyms. It's not just at DMAS, it's across all of the state positions. So in your resume, the best practice is when you originally have an acronym, such as, let's say that I was talking about Virginia Department of Health. I'm going to say I'm going to spell out Virginia Department of Health, and then behind it, I'm going to put VDH. And that's going to be the last time I ever spell it out. Going forward, if I mention VDH at any other point, it's always going to be VDH. But I can't say VDH unless I have it spelled out at the very beginning and then have the parentheses next to it. So that's a really standard practice across the government, especially with grant writing. So what that's going to do is it's going to demonstrate your experience working in the public sector, that you already understand how these nuances work. It really highlights that you have some background in the government. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a really important piece. Thank you. That was really great. Anyone else have any suggestions that they want to share, or comments or feedback? So before I let you go, because we have some time, when we started today, we were talking about yesterday and the role playing. I was letting people know that yesterday when I said the word role play, we had about 7 people drop off the call. I'm just curious, your live feedback, if you're comfortable. What are your thoughts? Should we as the workforce continue to try to push the envelope with role playing, or do you think that we're potentially going to eliminate some of our learners? And while you're thinking about that, Stephanie has a question. Who normally does the screening of the resume and application? And that's going to be your talent acquisition partner. So someone in Tony Borges' team, whether that's Meredith or whether that's Christina, there's a whole team up there that is going to partner with you. They're going to help you make sure that if you're hiring manager, that you're doing the posting correctly. They're going to do the screening, and they're going to send you the list of people that screened in. But yeah, just curious. What are your thoughts on? Okay.
I think
We're
we
gonna
should continue to push it, Misty.
Thank you. Okay, cool. Thank you. I was like not sure about it. I'm gonna try and see if we can create a culture where we feel safe with each other. We can role play and really learn from each other. And I hope that you guys continue to join us. And we're so excited that you were able to be with us for this series. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I'm really hopeful this helped all of you, and please reach out to us individually. We're here. We want to make sure that you're getting what you need, and it really is our priority to support you. And thank you for your feedback, Stephanie. I really appreciated that this morning. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the link for you to give us your opinions on today's session. Please feel free to write anything you want, be as candid as possible. This is anonymous. We do not circle back to see who did what. We can't. I've got it programmed where we can't. And we do look at all the information you provide. Specifically, we want to see if we're doing a good job, and if not, how can we pivot and do better based on your feedback. And most importantly as well, we're looking at things you're interested in. What trainings do you want? So something that has come up in the last 6 months of survey data, specifically from the information I'm sending you here, is that people are coming back and saying, hey, we really want more information on project management. So we are currently looking at that, how we can develop something around that. So just really, I want you to know your input is being looked at, listened to, and put into action. So, oh, David, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, one question, particularly on the DMAS side of the application process. When an application is submitted and you receive the confirmation email, is there a follow-up email if you're not considered for the interview?
That is a part of the system that, like the settings in the system on that particular Virginia Jobs website. I've seen where, for example, I've seen Virginia Department of Transportation send a follow-up, like, we appreciated your application, we really enjoyed reading it, but you weren't selected. And then I've seen other people that it just kind of, it looks like they're still processing it 2 years later. So I think it depends on the whoever the point of contact is in each agency that has that's programming into that. It's a really great question. I always appreciate it when I get the follow-up, so I'm not waiting forever to figure out what's going on. A lot of times to get the interview call, it takes a lot longer than you would think at a private sector would, so it keeps you kind of like anxious. One thing that I will say is that if you receive a call, from one of your references that says, hey, David, this is Misty, just want to let you know that DMAS called and they're checking your references. What that means is you're getting offered the position. That's just a stone cold truth. They do not check references on people unless you're the chosen candidate. So that's a really exciting thing when I'm like, woohoo, getting my references checked. And that also gives me the ability to go ahead and think about my negotiation. So, okay, they're going to get a call. I'm getting a call and I'm going to go ahead and predict that they're not giving me the highest range. So what are my talking points when I do the negotiation for the offer?
Okay. One more question.
Yeah.
What is your recommendation for arrival times for both in-person and online interviews?
15 minutes. But I will say that I get lost really easily. I have no sense of direction. So whenever I'm going somewhere that I'm not familiar with or going somewhere that I'm not sure what the parking situation is, I leave 45 minutes earlier than I should. But I get really nervous about that personally. But 15 minutes is when you would want to be in the lobby.
And how about video interviews?
That's a little different because I don't want to come across as being the first person that opens it up and like I'm so, I don't know. I try to keep my cards close. So I come in about 5 minutes prior.
Okay, I was thinking 5 too. Great.
Yeah. Although I'm ready to get on. I'm like, oh, I need to get this out of the way. And like I said, when it's in person, when it's virtual, have your cheat sheets up, and they're not going to be able to tell that you have all your stories written out. The reason for the 15 minutes beforehand is because a lot of times people provide you with those interview questions 10 minutes prior before your interview starts. So if you're not there within that time frame, you may miss out on the opportunity to review what questions are going to be asked.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm so glad you guys came. Thank you so much for supporting us here on the workforce team and just making it so easy for us and comfortable. And we really look forward to this year and training all of you and reaching the topics that you're interested in. So thank you so much, everybody. We're going to stay on the call in case there's any more questions, but otherwise, thank you again and feel free to reach out anytime.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job, Jeremy.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and sign off.
Okay.
Jeremy?
Is someone requesting Jeremy? He'll be back on in 1 minute.
How do you feel?
Oh, I thought someone was requesting me, Kathy. So.